Hey there, I'm Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. Today I'm going to be giving you a very late September wrap-up. I know it's late, I've been super busy at work. So, September wasn't a great reading month for me. It's probably one of the worst months that I've had for reading, and I think it's basically just because my work has just started to get really busy and I've just basically not had a lot of time to just read. You can kind of say that my September wrap-up is actually my Term Infinity and Beyond wrap-up, because I basically only read books for Term Infinity during September. I did not read anything else, and I'm very ashamed of myself, but like, I literally haven't been able to do anything else. Also, I may have thrown my iPod on the floor trying to stop my cat from like escaping the house. It didn't work, he escaped anyway, but I kind of cracked the screen and it's been in for a repair, so I've not been able to actually listen to anything for a while. So, Term Infinity / September wrap-up, that's what we got today. So the first book that I read in September was Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. Now, Red Mars is not the usual type of book that I would normally read. Bear in mind that all of the Term Infinity books and all of the books on this readathon are in the sci-fi genre. And basically, Red Mars is about a group of colonists that head out to Mars and start terraforming Mars. It is not particularly a fluid narrative. It follows very different people and occasionally flicks back and forth between different people. You've got a lot of different ethnicities, but everyone seems to speak English. In all fairness, it does deal a lot with how culture is set up, how the culture on Mars is established, and there are tensions between different cultures in wanting to do things. Particularly the Americans and the Russians have like a little bit of a friction going on, and then there are people with different views. Some people are kind of opposed to terraforming Mars because they believe that if you terraform it, then it turns it into something that Mars isn't, and everything that is fascinating about Mars then disappears because you've turned it into like Earth version 2. And then there's also how the people on Earth deal with Mars. Is it a commodity? Do they believe that everything that's on Mars belongs to them? Or should Mars be something completely different, like a different country, effectively? I mean, I know it's a planet, but I mean, they want to set themselves up as a sole entity rather than being necessarily part of Earth. So it's really interesting how the book is laid out and the different things that happen in the book. I particularly enjoyed like the ending of the book because like shit actually started to hit the fan, and that was quite interesting. But in terms of the sort of story that I like to read myself, I tend to find that I would prefer more of a storyline rather than just, let's terraform Mars now. We're going to do this to terraform Mars, we're going to do this to terraform Mars, this is what's going to happen next, this is happening next, and it's like, yeah. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this book, because also I've been thinking about it a lot after I've read it, and I'm kind of thinking that I want to see what happens next, sort of thing. But it was also really slow, so it's like swings and roundabouts with that book. I have a feeling I'm going to go to the sequel because I'm interested in it, but who knows? Who knows with that book? The second book that I picked up was actually a reread. It falls into the sci-fi / fantasy genre, and I'm totally okay with that because, you know, love me some fantasy. But anyway, the book that I read was Wolf in Shadow by David Gemmell. So, as y'all know, I love David Gemmell. Wolf in Shadow is quite different from a lot of his other books that I rave about consistently, and basically it's set when the Earth has sort of tilted on its axis and everything that was water is now land, and the people who are living there have a weird, twisted society. There is twinges of magic and things going on like that. There is a cult of Satanists. There is this one guy here, John Shano, who is the Jerusalem man, and he's just a guy that reads the Bible and wants to find Jerusalem, and he obviously believes in Christianity. It's really interesting because, I mean, he just has like a really shit deal. Like, read the book and you'll totally understand what I mean. I just felt really sorry for John Shano. I'd read this book before, but at a much younger age, and I didn't really appreciate it the first time I read it because I was like, don't really like books about religion. I mean, it's not exactly a book about religion. And like I realise that more now. It's more about beliefs and in terms of what people will do for what they believe in and the different sort of ways that is enacted in different things. I'm trying not to give anything away. But yeah, this book has some great references, as references to the Titanic, there's references to the city of Atlantis, and you know, it's just a really good time. As the books carry on, there are more biblical references, and the ending to the trilogy just is the reason that I wanted to read this again and pick it up. So if you're after something that's quite interesting, like a sci-fi fantasy sort of mix, it's really great. And David Gemmell's a brilliant writer, so it's definitely worth checking out. Speaking of brilliant writers, I next picked up Red Shirts by John Scalzi. Okay, so the story with Red Shirts for me is that I once read about 50 pages of it and then put the book down because I moved house. And then I just haven't picked it up since. So I picked it up for this readathon, and I loved it. So I am a Star Trek girl. I'll admit that I do love me some Star Trek. So this was kind of perfect. This book is basically like a Star Trek parody, or at least it comes off that way at first, and it is about the so-called red shirts. So if you don't know what a red shirt is, in Star Trek there are these people who wear red shirts and they don't have names, or they have like a very, very bit part, and they're basically the first people to die, like around the main characters. They're like the ones that just get picked off and they die. And Red Shirts is basically about a group of people who start to realise that there's something funny going on, and that whenever they're around main characters or away missions, bad things are going to happen to these people. So that initially got me into the book, and I don't really want to say anything about like what happens halfway through this book, because like that made me like go, oh, okay. So like the first part of the book is really interesting, and the second part, it just like, it kind of trolled me a little bit, and I was sat at work listening to this one, and I was like, and then like 2 seconds later I was like, and like I literally had to take my headphones out, turn to the person next to me and be like, this book's just trolled me. I'll not spoil anything, but John Scalzi's a great writer. He is very, very funny, and this was very well set out, and I enjoyed it a lot, so definitely check it out. So the next book that I read was actually one that I have been wanting to pick up since uni. I sort of read a bit of it in uni, and then I didn't have time to finish it because I read so many books at uni and just didn't have time. So this one is The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. So this book is about conscription, and people from Earth go off to fight against the Taurans, and they are basically an alien race that people don't really know what they are. They're just sort of fighting them, and they don't really know what they're doing it for, but they're gonna fight them. That's what's gonna happen. So it follows this guy called William Mandela pretty much throughout his life. You go from like his basic training, and then him returning to Earth after a couple of missions, and then finding that Earth has completely changed because, wow, this book actually deals with time dilation in a really, really good way. Basically everyone that he knows is either aged or dead, and like the Earth has completely changed, and he finds that he's just completely not suited to it. So he ends up going back into space again, and then more things happen. It's kind of crazy how insane this war seems when you're actually reading it. I've been told that it's actually very like the Vietnam War. I don't actually know that much about the Vietnam War, so that's shame on me. But yeah, if you read this book with that knowledge, I'm sure you'll get far more out of it than I did, and I just really enjoyed it anyway. It's kind of sad, like, when you actually look at it, but I did enjoy a lot of the sci-fi elements, obviously, the different things that space can do to people, and the different ways that people will deal with things, like there's a disaster, this is what you're going to do, and different ways to get around it. I found that really interesting. Overall, I definitely recommend this one. It's, you know, it's a little bit hard going at times, but I think it's definitely worth reading. Okay, so my battery's about to run out, so I'm going to have to do really, really quick with this one. The last book that I read in September is The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. I've never read a H.P. Lovecraft book before. I know it's a novella, it's not this entire book. I didn't have time for that. I found it really interesting. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't pick up anything H.P. Lovecraft again, because I did actually enjoy it. It was creepy as fuck. To be honest, I kind of considering listening to these because I think that would be really creepy, and I'm kind of looking forward to doing that in October because creepy month, you know, Halloween-y type things. I think that'd be really cool. To be honest, the thing that I like the most about the Call of Cthulhu is just the atmosphere that it built. Like, it was really good to actually finally get a knowledge of this creature that everyone talks about in, like, modern culture. You see it in films all the time, everyone's like, oh, Cthulhu and stuff like that. And, like, I hadn't read the source material, so I just sort of went off what modern material was telling me. So it was really interesting to actually get a handle on that. It was an alright read. Definitely wouldn't be put off reading any more from him. So this month I'm not going to do a film review, a mini film review of the films that I've seen. I'm thinking about putting that in a joint video with October. It just makes a little bit more sense to me at the moment because my battery's running out, so when that's charged I'll film you a real video. So I hope you liked this video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!